You're welcome to Explore Insights. In this video, we will consider on how to configure initial switch settings. And here we have about 5 objectives to look at. If you're just joining this video for the first time, please do well to subscribe. Without any further ado, let's begin. Now, towards my left-hand side, you'll see that we have a configuration of 2 switches, S1 and S2 respectively, and 2 pieces, PC1 and PC2. So when we talk about to configure initial switch settings, we have to first of all look at the 5 objectives we have. And the first one is to verify the default switch configuration. The second is to configure a basic switch configuration. The third is to configure a motd banner. The fourth is to save our configuration files to NVRAM. And lastly, we repeat the same thing we have done for S1, but also for S2. So let's look at the background or the scenario. So in this activity, we need to perform basic switch configuration tasks. We'll be able to secure access to the CLI and the console ports using encrypted and plaintext password. We'll also learn how to configure message for users logging into the switch using the banner motd. So these message banners are also used to warn unauthorized users that access is prohibited. Now you should also take note that the switch we are going to be using will be 2960 switch, which uses the iOS version 12.2 by default. So if required, the iOS version can be updated from a file server in the packet tracer topology. The switch can then be configured to iOS version 15.0 if that version is required. So below here, we have the instructions. So we'll start with part 1, which is to verify the default switch configuration. And here we'll follow the steps. So step 1 is to enter the privilege exec mode. Now, before I proceed with every step in this lab, I want you to watch my previous videos. The first video was all about packet tracer, and the second video I treated the different iOS CLI modes, and I also show how to navigate between this mode. What I'm saying is, how do you move from the user exec mode to the privilege exec mode, and how do you go back? So I was able to explain all that for different modes. Now my third video talked about the basic device configuration. So most of those things I've treated in the third video. I'll be highlighting it also here. Please do well to watch my previous videos. So let's continue. So for step 1, we are to enter the privilege exec mode. When we talk about the privilege exec mode, it means the one symbolized with the hash. Yeah, so you can access or switch commands from privilege exec mode. However, because many of the privilege command figure operating parameters, privilege access can be password protected to prevent unauthorized use. So we'll also look at how we can add in password here. Now, the first thing we need to do, if you read up to this side, is first of all, we need to click S1 and then the CLI tab, then we'll press enter. So after that step, once we are here, this is the user exec mode. We have to type enable, or you type en, and it will bring you to the privilege exec mode. So for this step, we have to go to the privilege exec mode. So let's see how that goes. So first I'm going to click S1. And once I'm here, which is the CLI, you can see I'm going to tap the enter key. And at this point, I'm at the user exec mode. This is the user exec mode. I'm going to type en or the full node, which is enable. So anyone will go. So once we're here, we're actually in the privilege exec mode. So from here, it said, notice that the prompt changed to reflect the privilege exec mode. Yes, so this is what we can see here. We are actually now on the privilege exec mode. And how do we know? Because of the symbol hash. Greater than sign, you know that we are in the user. And once we put in enable, it brings us to the privilege exec mode. Now let's look at our step 2. Step 2 says, examine the current switch configuration. So we want to examine the current switch configuration, and we can only do that by entering the show running config command. And for us to do that, we're going to type show space running -config on the privilege exec mode. So type with me. So once you're done with that, you just tap your enter key. Now you're going to see more. You just tap in your enter key. But if you want to be fast, just go with your spacebar. Okay, so this is where we are now. And while we are doing so, you can see on the page that we are asked different questions. So let's quickly go through these 5 questions. So the first one said, how many fast internet interfaces does the switch have? Well, to answer this question, let's go back to what we have. So on S1, how do we know the fast interface? You're going to see that as interface fast internet 0/1, 0/2. So let me take you up. You can see how the numbers are going, and that gives you a good count. This is where the fast internet stopped. So you can see that we have 24. So to this, you can say we have 24 fast Ethernet interfaces. So let's go to the next one. The next one said, how many gigabyte Ethernet interfaces does the switch have? So we are back again to this. How many can we count? 1, 2. So this tells us that we have 2 gigabyte Ethernet interfaces. So let's see the next one. It says, what is the range of values shown for the VTY lines? What is the range? Okay, so let me take you there. So for the range, where can we see VTY? Actually here, line VTY. Okay, so it shows us that we have from, remember the keyword range. So we have from 0 to 15. 0 to 15. Okay, so we'll be able to answer that. And the fourth question says, which command will display the current contents of the non-volatile random access memory? This is also known as NVRAM. So which command? So the command that will display our current contents is show startup configuration. So let's see, why does the switch respond with startup config is not present? Okay, let's see how we can know the fifth question. So from the other one, we said show startup, that means the fourth question, config. Okay, the full name is show startup configuration. So we shorten the configuration to config. Okay, so when we do that, this brought us to be asked about this question. Startup config is not present. So the question is, why does the switch comes up with this response? This displayed the message because the configuration file was not saved to NVRAM. So currently it's only located in RAM. So let's move to another one, which is part 2. So part 2, it says create a basic switch configuration. The first thing we want to do is we want to change the default name switch for this switch device. We can do that in the global configuration mode. Now, like I said, there is need to navigate from the privilege exec mode to the global configuration mode. And how do we do that? We need to type configure terminal. You can also type conf t with a space between. It's okay. Anyone is okay. I just want to teach you how to go about the shortcuts. So once we are there, you tap enter key and it will bring you to the global configuration mode, which is symbolized with this. Now, what is happening here is we want to change the host name, which you can see here, has switched to S1. So the command will be hostname with then the name you want to give it. So in this case, we are taking S1. Take note, I use capital S and I put 1. So once I'm done with that, I'll press my enter key and you can see we'll be able to change the name from switch to S1. And then since we have achieved this task, exit. And it brings us back to the privilege exec mode. So let's go to step 2. So step 2 says secure access to the console line. Now to secure access to the console line, we need to access the config line mode and then set the console password to let me in. So now we want to secure access to the console line. All we need to do is to move from the privilege exec mode to the global configuration mode. And once we're there, we type line console 0 and we input the password let me in. So it's important to remember the password you use. So the name of the password for this now is let me in, but we need to come up with this keyword password. Okay, so once we put the password, it is important for us to go in with the login so that it will activate the password. So let's see how we go about that, coding it. So I'm going to type config t. Yeah, so that's the short form. And remember line console 0. You can also have console 1, but at this point, we're dealing with console 0. And then the password will be let me in. So remember, if I come to the console port, I just remember that my password is let me in. And then log in, then exit. So if I want to go out from the global configuration mode, I say type in exit, and it brings me to the privilege exec mode. Now, we have a beautiful question here, which is, why is the login command required? Now, like I said, it's important for us to put this login in order to activate the password. So in order for the password checking process to work, we need to put both the password and the login commands. Okay, so let's go to step 3, which is to verify that the console access is secure. Now, we have put the password, so we want to verify what we have done. So that's what step 3 will be doing. So all we need to do is to exit the privilege mode to verify that the console port password is in effect. So we are going to exit, like we are leaving, and this is just like what we have. Now, for us to get in, you can see at this point, it's already telling you user access verification. We need to put the password. So the password we used was let me in. And there we go. Remember, this is the user exec mode. So let's go to what we have next, having done with step 3. Let's see what we have next in step 4. But meanwhile, you should take note that if the switch do not ask for a password, it means that you've not added the login parameters in step 2. So check and make sure you put your login parameters so that when you're coming back to the console port, it's actually asking you for the password, which is let me in. Now let's move to step 4, which is to secure privileged mode access. Now we need to set the enable password to Cisco. So take note of this $sign. Okay, and also this is 1. So the password protects access to privilege mode. The first thing we want to do, we want to secure the privilege mode access. So don't mix it up. The first one was for the console. The second is for the privilege mode. Now, how do we go about this? First of all, put enable in the user exec mode. That takes us to the privilege exec mode. From the privilege exec mode, we are going to use config T, that means the configure terminal, and it brings us to the global configuration mode. Then at this point, we are going to put our password by using the command enable password, and take note of this password. This is C1 $C0. Now, once we are done with that, we can exit. Okay, so let's do that as soon as possible. So permit me to also show you the shortcut of what I'm doing. It's the same thing. Now we're going to exit. So we have the fifth step. So in our fifth step, we are to verify that the privilege mode access is secured. So we've put the password in step 4. This time we want to verify what we have done in step 4. All we need to do is to first, in A, we need to enter the exit command again to log out of the switch. So, and then we enter, and you will now be asked for a password. Now you should take note that the first password is the console password, which we configured for line console 0. And we used the let me in password. And once we have that done, it will bring us to the user exec mode. And we enter the commands to access the privilege mode. So enter the second password you configured to protect the privilege exec mode. Then we'll verify the configuration. So verify the configuration by examining the contents of the running configuration file. Okay, so let's just do all we need to do now. So the first thing we are supposed to do is to exit. Now, once I'm here, I'm going to press the enter key. Now, this one is for the console, and the console password is let me in. Now we are at user exec mode. So I just put enable. So this is the password that is required of us to enter the privilege exec mode. C1 $C0. So all we need to do is to press enter key. And this password is that gets us to the user exec mode, which we did for the line console 0. Remember, the password is let me in. And once we're here, we type enable, which can be written as EN. Now, this password we have here gives us access to go to the privilege exec mode. So remember, it is C1 small letter C0. So if you don't get the password correctly, it will pop up again for you to put your password. So please make sure you rightly put the password by carefully looking at your keyboard. So from this, we'll be able to get access to the privilege exec mode. And for us to verify our configuration, we need to examine the content of the running configuration file. So we need to type show running config. Yeah, so this is what we have. You notice that the console and the enable password are both in the plain text. So this is where we have, this is for the privilege access, the password we used. And let's go down. And also for this console, let me in. So they are both on the plain text. So this could actually pose a security risk if someone is looking over your shoulder, or obtain access to configure files stored in a backup location. So let's see what we now have in step 6. So let's see what we have in step 6. Step 6 says we should configure an encrypted password to secure access to privilege mode. Now, this enable password should be replaced with a new encrypted secret password using the enable secret command. So we set the enable secret password to it's a secret. Okay, so from what we can see here, for the password we put to access the privilege mode, and also for the line console, they are both plain text. So this time we want to encrypt the password. So it's very easy. So let me get back to the privilege exec mode, and I just type config C. Once I'm on the global configuration mode, I'm going to say enable secret, which is the command, and then we type the password we want. So in today's content, we are using it's a secret. So please take note of that, and then we exit. Let's see step 7, which says verify that the enable secret password is added to the configuration file. So let's enter the show running config command again to verify the new enable secret password is configured. Now we should take note of this abbreviate, which is this show running config as show run. So take note of this. So we have show run. Rather than typing so much lines of words, just use show run. Now let's see what's different. Now take notes of what we have here. Yeah, so we'll be able to encrypt our plain text password. So we have this now. And let's go and see that for the line console. So let's quickly see what we have. So you notice that the password has been encrypted. Previously, we have something that represents something like Cisco, which is the C1 $C0. So it has been encrypted to what we can see clearly here. Now we have a good question. In step 7, we have about 2 questions. So it says, what is display for the enable secret password? What is display? What can you see on your screen? So for me, this is what I have. Okay. Now let's move on. Why is the enable secret password displayed differently from what we configured? Now, the enable secret is shown in encrypted form, whereas the enable password is in plain text. Yeah, so take notes of what we have. So due to the fact that we were able to use the enable secret command to encrypt the password for the privilege mode access, you can also see that for the line console, we used the password and it was actually in the plain text. That means it was not encrypted. There is need for us to then encrypt both this plain text password using the service password encryption command. So let's quickly do that by going to our global configuration mode by typing config T. So we have service password encryption, and once we're there, we can exit. So if you configure any more passwords on the switch, will they be displayed in the configuration file as plain text or in encrypted form? Explain. So it means for now we just have to, so if we configure any more password on the switch, maybe we have more password we've done, so will they be displaying the configuration file as plain text or in encrypted form, which you explain? Well, I'll say that the service password encryption command encrypts all current and future password. Now, if we want to verify what we have done here before moving over to part 3, go ahead to type show run. So for the show run command, what can you see also? Now, before we proceed, we have this, and then you can see this part where we had let me in before, it has been encrypted. Okay, so previously when we used the enable secret, we had this. Now, when we use the service password encryption, we could see this result as being encrypted rather than the plain text, which could be in the, which would have been that stuff close to Cisco. And if we move over here in the console, previously we had let me in, but because we've been able to use the service password encryption command, it has actually changed this, which is of type 7. Yeah. So let's go to part 3 and see what we have in part 3. So in part 3, we have to configure a motd banner. Now the question is, what is motd banner? motd simply means message of the day. So the step 1 is to configure a message of the day, motd banner. The Cisco iOS command sets includes a feature that allows you to configure messages that anyone logging onto the switch sees. So this message are called message of the day or motd banners. Enclose the banner text in quotation or use a delimiter different from any character appearing in the motd string. So we can really say what this motd does in our device. So how do we go about that, and what kind of thing can you write? You can actually write authorized access only, stay away, keep off, you're not allowed, something like that. So you can use any kind of word you want that symbolize a kind of restriction. So let's see how we can go about this step. So from this, I'm going back to type my config T, and then I will write banner motd. This is a secured system, authorized access only. And once you're done, you can exit. So I think we have a beautiful question here, which you might be wondering, okay, now we have the motd, when will it be displayed? So when will this banner be displayed is actually what we have here as a question. Now, okay, so this banner message you have done will be displayed when someone accesses the switch through the console port. Now, another question here is, why should every switch have a motd banner? Like, why should we have message of the day for every switch? Well, I'll say that it is advisable for every switch to have message of the day banner, which is the motd banner, because it warns unauthorized users that access is prohibited. Aside that, this motd banner can also be used for sending message to network personnel or technicians, maybe by telling them about impending system shutdown, or also telling who to contact for access. Now let's go to part 4. For part 4, we have save and verify configuration files to NVRAM. So how do we save our files we've configured to NVRAM? And also, how do we verify what we have done? So we have step 1. We verify that the configuration is accurate using the show run command. So we save the configuration file. You have completed the basic configuration of the switch. Now we need to back it, the running configuration file, to the NVRAM to ensure that the changes made are not lost. Peradventure the system is rebooting or there's a sudden shutdown. So it's important for we to save this so that we don't lose the file. So how do we do that? We have to use the code copy running config to startup config. So what's happening here is we are trying to copy the file from here, which is temporal, to the startup config. Yeah. So let's do that straight away. And also take note of here, at the points when you're done with this, it requires you to tap your enter key, and then it will build up the configuration. So we have copy, running, config, start up, config. Then this point is asking you destination file name, just that enter. Now it's reading up and it comes up with OK. So let's proceed. We have another question. It says, what is the shortest abbreviated version of copy running config startup config command? To answer that, I would say is cop space r space is, which you can see I've written cop space r space s. Okay, so examine the startup configuration file. Which command will display the contents of environment? So if we want to see the contents of the environment, definitely it's going to be the show startup config. So this is what we have. Now the next thing is, are all the changes that were entered recorded in the file? Definitely yes. So yes, it is the same as the running config. So let's see. This is actually what we had in the running configuration, and this is what we now have in the startup configuration. So they are the same. Let's just go down to the line console. The same thing. So we have the same information. So let's go to part 5. So part 5 is supposed to be your task. So it says configure S2. You have completed the configuration on S1. Now you need to do the same for S2. If you cannot remember the command, refer to parts 1 to 4 for assistance. Now, these are all the things you need to watch out for. We need to configure S2 with the following parameters. The first task we need to do is device name, S2. The second is to protect access to the console using the let me in password. The second is to put the enable password of this password, and also the enable secret password of it's a secret. Now we need to configure an appropriate message to those logging into the switch, and that's to tell us about the banner message motd. Okay, now we need to encrypt all plain text password. We need to put encryption, and we need to ensure that the configuration is correct. Maybe you're wondering at this point, this is where we're supposed to use the service password encryption. Okay, now we need to save the configuration file to avoid loss if the switch is powered down. So this is where we are copying the running config to the startup config. Okay, so how do you go about S2? So just in case you feel you can't remember everything that was done, just stay relaxed. This is why I'm here to help you. So I'm minimizing the S1. I'm moving over to S2 by just clicking here. And the same thing we did. Remember what we did? Just to tap in your enter key. And at this part, we had our enable, which we are going to type in here. And from here, we have our C, which is configuration terminal. It will bring us to the global configuration mode. And the first thing we did was we had to do is to give the host name S2, because the first one was S1, so this one we're putting it as S2. And we're going to use the key command hostname S2. So that the changes will be here. So I don't want to make this video lengthy. So I just put in my line console 0. And then the password, we are asked to use let me in. And remember, we have to log in to activate the password. And we'll move over to enable password. The password is needed before one gets access to the privilege accept mode. So C1 $C0. Now let's encrypt with enable secrets. In this case, it's a secret. The next I want to do is to put the message of the day banner by saying banner motd, and then I'll specify what I want them to be. So let me just say stay away. So the next thing I want to do is to encrypt all plain text password by using the service password encryption, and then we exit. So at this point, we have to save the configuration we have done here. So we take the file from the running config to the startup config to avoid loss if the switch power down. So we're just going to type cop. So I'm just coming in with let me in. I'll put enable. And at this point, I'll put it as secret. So when I know that everything has been done and my login is ascertained, that when a user comes in, it's important for that user to key in the password. Then I'll just do the copy this time. So I can ascertain that all configuration and the password has been infected and they are correct. So I'm just going to copy this. So once I'm here, this shows that I'm trying to save the configuration file of what I've done to avoid loss, just in case this switch is powered down. So it's okay. So we've come to the end of today's topic, which is the 2.5.5 packet tracer configure initial switch settings. And I hope you've enjoyed the content and you'll be able to do your tasks. So don't forget to like and to subscribe to this wonderful channel. I'll be signing off now. So see you in my next video. There I'll be looking at 2.9.2, which is the basic switch and end device configuration, and many more I'll be uploading. So do have a nice time. Bye.